share screen, and then I'm going to share screen, and then Anjali and I are going to pass this between us at some point. So we're here to talk about the library, obviously. The agenda we want to review with you today is to kind of talk about the schedule overall, give you a visual sense of where we are, what decisions need to be made, and when they need to be made. And then Anjali is going to share with you some extrapolation from a student survey that was done recently about use of the library space. We've also got some plans to review with you and talk about how things are kind of shaping up, and then talk about our next steps. So can you all see the screen? Perfect. Okay. So, you know, what's a little counterintuitive about this is that if we want to get this work done by September of this year, we really have to have all of our furniture selection and decisions made by the end of March. As you can imagine, furniture is one of those things that's been really affected by the supply chain, and we have to get orders in by the end of March, and there is still no guarantee that everything will come in August. It's entirely possible that it will slip into September, which I'm sure we could figure out a way around. So starting up here at the top, we have been doing some review of furniture options kind of internally with a smaller group to see what's possible. Another complication in buying this much furniture is that the district has certain bid and procurement rules it has to follow. So we either have to buy off of an approved co-op like KCDA or US Communities, or there's a number of them, or we have to go out to bid, and we really do not have time to go out to bid for a furniture package. And so we've been looking at what our options are through KCDA, and they're great. Much of the furniture we would have looked at anyway is on KCDA, so that's helpful. We're also talking about whether we want to create a smaller executive committee from this larger group of 20 people. We have a small group today, but we may need to make some quick decisions, and so we'll try and get this small group together by the end of the month to look at furniture. We also need to finalize this plan so that we can start putting together the cost estimates for the furniture and architectural work. There's some structural work that will have to happen in the library as part of any future dividing wall or anything that goes in. We have a key thing that's happening for the Tech levy on February 8th, and that will really dictate how much, in addition to flooring and furniture, we're able to do. We're going to just go full steam ahead, assuming that that's going to pass. But if that were to fail, we might have to regroup and make some other decisions. We plan on coming back to the larger group in the middle of February. In the middle of February, we'll also get some feedback on furniture ideas from kids. During February and March, our architectural team, Anjali, and engineers are going to need to put together the bid documents. We'll need to submit to the city for a permit in March, get our final furniture selection done in March. And then once we have our furniture selection, we need to figure out all the finishes. So I know Nick will be advocating for maroon fabrics in the library. So we need to get all of that detail done, and then we need to have our furniture orders placed by the end of March, and we need to go out for bid for the construction work in April. Once we bid, the board has to approve that bid, and then we'd start construction middle of June. And I've shown here that we would finish construction in early September with furniture installation, the latter part of September. And we are going to do absolutely everything in our power to get this thing done for the opening day of school. But given this crazy world we're living in right now, I just want everybody to go into this understanding that it may end up flowing into September, and that we set our expectations accordingly. It'll be a wonderful success if we can get it done before, and like I said, we'll do everything in our power to make that happen. But but prepare yourself. We need some contingency plans in the event that's not possible. So any questions on schedule?
Not a question, Brandy, but a comment. Christina, you and I, maybe for the next tech meeting, need to discuss if the library is shut down during this period of time, what that'll look like for our kind of back to school days, and where we would then pivot and move all of our materials to a new location if they were under construction. So at our next tech meeting, Christina, let's just, you and I mind melt about talking to the rest of our people about that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And, best case scenario is that we'll be putting furniture in on Labor Day weekend and the finishing touches on it. So if you've got fees and photos and, some of those kind of things that happen earlier, we should really be thinking about alternate locations for that.
And
Nick.
Since we have two funding sources, one is going to be with PTSA, and it will cover furniture at the minimum and possibly go further than that for some of the cabinetry and some of that work. How would I'm thinking out loud. I'm thinking, we're looking at that levy vote, because we know if that goes clear, that opens this timeline in both directions and everything goes as this flows. If that levy doesn't go in the right way, I'm assuming that we would go through the furniture purchase and those things that PTA funded in the same timeline you have here, correct?
Yep, that's my understanding as well. That if the levy didn't pass, we would still pull all the flooring out, furniture out, and probably those cabinets that, the fixed bookcases that are in the middle, and do the whole furniture order on this same timeline. If it does pass, then we'd also be doing the structural work and some of the things you're going to see today.
So, yeah, so the casing and the furniture, those are fairly independent of the vote, but we want to wait till that vote happens so we know how simple this is as far as a timeline, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And, just a side note with that carpet, Nick, can we troubleshoot the flooding that has occurred before we put in new carpet?
We already know.
We know that's
Okay.
a Tony issue.
I'd hate to ruin the new carpet.
Yeah.
Yes, we're aware of what
Yeah.
causes it to.
Oh, good.
Bless those scuppers by the architect. Yes. Okay, Anjali, with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Okay, we don't need to share. There we go. Okay, can everyone see my screen there? Yep. Okay. So the last time we all met, we showed some more developed plans. And so we actually decided to take a step back because we clearly, your group had been doing some planning and we had been sort of doing some responses to that separately. So we took a step back to make sure that we're all on the same page so that we can go forward efficiently and quickly as we need to do. So the first thing that we did was Maria helped us with a survey for the students. We wanted to get a handle on what was the likeliest overall space use and getting very specific with them, not only in terms of, quiet, active, breakout, and workstations, but also in terms of what kind of furniture, seating, or use in each of those areas. So you'll see in the quiet area, there's mostly kind of quiet study work, a little bit of lounge furniture. In the active area, there's a whole range of furniture solutions. The breakout spaces, actually, there's more of a need or balance need between small group rooms and Zoom rooms. And then the workstation, which is we're thinking of as kind of like a work counter or work desk. The fixed computer stations are a little bit out of date now. What students really need are a place to fold and cut paper and maybe a place to print. So that's what we use to generate the plan that I'll show next. So this plan is really diagrammatic, and the intent is to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of the big picture. I will start maybe over here on the left-hand side, because this move, putting in a fixed glass wall, an operable glass wall, is the first is kind of allows the library to be divided up into quiet areas and active areas. This is probably levy dependent in terms of funding now, but we know in the long term this is something that we want for the library. So in this quiet zone, which can be, this is an operable wall that can be fully opened up or fully closed off. It could be used for a meeting. It could be used for an evening event, even a daytime event. The idea here is there are flexible work tables that could be used for individuals to do solo work. They could be ganged together if a group of friends wants to work quietly together, although this area does need to be quiet, or, for two people, or they could be completely separated. And this can be reconfigured based on the needs of the library. And also, Maria, if you find that the group tables aren't working, you're going to pull those apart and make that be what happens in there. We're thinking a little bit of lounge furniture, not a lot, but just in case someone wants to quietly read and be comfortable. The large room in the center with the tall ceiling, we're thinking of removing the fixed bookcases and the fixed computer workstations, allowing this to be much more flexible. So some group work booths, so almost like a diner booth style, some solo chairs with tablet arms that could be used for reading or solo work, some group tables, cafe tables, and some lounge furniture. And these white bars are kind of showing the idea of flexible, movable bookshelves that could be used to divide space. But the idea is that all of that furniture is movable and flexible and can be shifted around year to year. Tucked in the corners towards the entry are some of those fixed pieces, a printing station and a work center, so places where a student might dash in, print some things, and then dash out again. A work center where there's paper cutting, a hole punch, that sort of thing. And there is currently a wall here where my cursor is. The idea is to open that up a little bit so that librarian desk can really oversee the entry, which is kind of classic library design. The librarian wants to see who's coming in and out and be a much more welcoming desk. The book repair area here is perhaps could be more efficiently laid out. So we're thinking about a quieter office for the librarians, and perhaps one librarian or both librarians are out here, but if they need to take a call or they need to have some quiet work, one option is to have a librarian space back in the book repair area that could be separated or not. The other possibility is to create this office as a librarian's office. We are thinking that after COVID, these rooms here that are currently being used as offices because of COVID might be returned to library use for small groups, because that's a really big need for students. So these two rooms could be used for small groups, depending on where the librarian goes. And then back here are some spaces that could be used for testing, could be flexible offices. I actually had renamed this flex offices, which I'm going to do that again. They could be for non-librarian staff, or they could be flexible and used by the library. Again, I think that will change over time depending on what the school's needs are. Any questions with this? Can I help anyone orient themselves to the room or explain anything?
With the testing and flex offices, are you altering the walls in there at all, or just?
Yes, very much so. This, we need a wall here to have that op wall die into. So this will need to be reconfigured, and we'll take that opportunity to make this serve, either 2 rooms or 3 rooms, depending on what the needs are. You can't really get more than 3 rooms in there, but it could be 2 or 3.
Okay, and does that include that little space on the left with the doors opening?
So I'm assuming that that is going to be chair storage. Because if you use this as a large meeting room, you're going to want to be able to have stackable chairs that have a place to live so that you can have a big meeting in here.
Looks good. I really appreciate the idea of creating a space for the library staff to have a place where they could make a call or do something, independently.
Yep.
This is Creighton. Where you have the printing station now, I think in the last presentation you were calling them Zoom booths or something like that.
Correct.
And there's a little buzz with the students. Are the group work booths, are those enclosed, or you're imagining more the private spaces being the rooms?
So the thought was that maybe these 2 small group rooms could be those enclosed rooms, because based on the survey, the small group is actually more of a need than a Zoom booth. And I think when COVID is done, that will be less of a need. These work booths in here, because this is an active zone, conversation is allowed. That is someplace where someone could make a call and will feel somewhat private because there'll be dividers.
And then I can't tell with the drawing, I think it's just my inability to read, but are there going to be windows in those small group rooms?
There is one on this one, and we would need to add one here for supervision. That's yeah, we don't want any enclosed rooms with no windows for high school students.
Good thinking.
Anjali, I really like how you created a quiet area and an active area, and you move through the active area to get to the quiet area. And that quiet area could be easily configured, in 10 minutes for a large meeting of 50 people.
Right.
I think that's really effective. And during the day, depending on how that glass wall was designed, it could either be fully shut with 2 doors, or it could be partially shut so that there was some sound separation between the 2, but that it still felt more connected. So I think that there's a lot of possibilities in how that wall is designed.
I appreciate also just the use of where the bookshelves are, creating some flow and separation. I agree with what you're just sharing, Maria. It's nice to see that you enter the main area, which is an active area, which can be, which could be, say loud. Then you walk back off for the small group rooms, and that's separate from the testing and also the flexible work tables. I like where you have the printing station up front makes sense to me, and the amount of workspace, Maria, looks like it would be appropriate for your staff.
And Anjali, you may have answered this in Creighton's question. So are you saying that we had Zoom booths and then now we do not? Is that?
I'm saying that rather than thinking of them as Zoom booths, we want to think of them as Zoom/small group rooms. Okay. Because when we surveyed, originally we thought the need was Zoom booths, but when we surveyed the students, there was almost more of a need for small group rooms. So getting something in here that's a little bit larger, which isn't to say someone couldn't duck in there for a phone call, but that the greater need is going to be, a couple of students working together on a project where they can either be here where it's completely, there's a closed door, or they can be in a booth working together. And if someone wants to take a call, they can do that in a booth here, which is not 100% sealed in, but you're tucked into a booth. I think we're kind of used to that now having a little quiet corner rather than, completely separate. So that was the idea, to make more of those and to make them a little bit bigger so that they're more useful for what students need. It also felt like by opening up this corner, and so the printing station is just a counter. So that's, rather than a full room, it maybe comes out 24 to 30 inches. That really lets this librarian's desk have a lot of visibility to who's coming in, and a lot of kind of a sense of really openness and welcome.
And that's
So just to take that,
that's where our data takes us. Then I think that's lovely. I guess I was thinking about something that's practically happening right now, is that I have a student weekly on Mondays that takes a mental health Zoom in my office, because there's not a space for her on campus, and she's not the only one. There's several people that need outside mental health services, yet they don't have transportation or leave and so forth. And maybe they can then reserve some of that space.
They can reserve a small group room. Yeah.
Yeah, they can
the
reserve
one
that.
thing we talked about was, these Zoom booths, which are basically like a phone booth, double wide phone booth, right? But they're modular. I mean, they're mobile, or you can set them up anywhere that you have power and an Ethernet connection. And because real estate was so tight within these boundaries, we thought, what are there some possibilities elsewhere in the building that we could set up one or two of these units? So that's kind of why we opted to go with something that would meet the needs, but would have more flexibility. So,
Tony, I heard double wide. My ears perked up. Am I following your thinking that maybe those cubbies in the hallway may be an area to do that, or is that where you're thinking?
We're thinking that. I mean, depending on size, there's lots of different options. The little knockout possibly outside of the counseling center. I think there's a window that faces out to the hallway there. There's a little knockout. These Zoom booths they're not huge, right? It's enough space to have a counter with a laptop, a telephone, and a chair, and or a stool of some sort. I mean, it's not designed to be in there for hours on end, but it's a quiet place to go. So I think there's different models out there that we could probably, or we could build for something, or have something built that meets the size that we have. So I think there's options out there once we identify where we might, be able to use something like this. And
we might also, depending on how those booths lay out, be able to fit one small, one Zoom booth and at the end, one that you could, sign up for if you needed to. But it didn't feel like 4 of them, or whatever we had shown before, 3 or 4, was really a good use of that space. But we can certainly see if we could fit one in.
Yeah, it is a daily request from multiple students to have a private space.
Can I ask another question? I think it's a new door that's added by the entryway door, a door that would be into the book storage area. Is that what I'm seeing there?
That's actually your book drop.
Oh, okay. So that's not a new feature.
No, that's not a new feature. And in fact, I think that I'm not quite showing it fully. I think there's a little closet here that the book drop connects to. So I'm not showing all of it, but that's so we don't put something in front of it.
No, totally fine. I just know there's times when, most teachers don't have access to the library, don't have that key. But there's been times when I want to get summer reading or someone gets hired, and it's just more of a thing where I have to schedule to be there with an admin or a custodian.
So you're kind of hoping that you could actually.
No, I was planning forward, thinking, oh,
Yeah,
that might be kind of nice to have access, but it's not really a requirement. So
yeah, okay.
Another like small idea I was hoping for is the signage for the library. Maybe something that juts outward rather than, because it's so hidden. One of the teachers said they had trouble finding the library because it was like so tucked away. If we could actually have something that protrudes so it's more visible.
Well, I mean, you know, just thinking about as part of this design, you know, maybe we think about some wayfinding and signage. So I'll jot that down because that could be part of a larger conversation. So, for example, to make sure that the quiet area says quiet in a way that's, you know, not just a laminated 11 by 17 poster, but actually, you know, that becomes just sort of part of the design.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite things about your design is that there are zones so students know
Mm-hmm.
to behave in certain areas, you know, out of respect for other people.
Yeah, maybe there's a simple kind of wayfinding approach where we indicate, you know, where things happen so that, because usually when I see like a lot of taped up signs, to me, it's a sign that, oh, maybe the architect didn't think through signage or didn't think through, you know, kind of those other cues. So we should, you know, that should be part of what we think about for sure.
Love that.
One question that I had that I think I saw it in the previous plans was that back area with the flexible work tables, since that is used as a staff PD meetings space a lot, what the plans were like. Right now, sometimes we've had one Promethean board on wheels, two side by side. I know there was a projector. I think in your plans you thought maybe like a bigger one. What is, excuse me if I missed that and you already said that.
No,
today.
I did not address that because this is so diagrammatic. I think that in the last round, we thought about screen or screens along this wall. I think that, you know, maybe you should tell us what your typical technology needs are for those kinds of meetings, and then we try to accommodate them.
So Anjali, one of the things, and I apologize, I'm not sure who I had this conversation with screens on that wall you're showing, one of the drawbacks to that is you're in full visibility.
That's true. Yeah.
The rest of the building and depending on the room. So depending on what the topic is, if it's a leadership team meeting or
right.
Some sort of a class, that's not something necessarily that's always appropriate to share.
Yeah. So it might be, yeah.
It may have been with Ann Reeves even, you know, putting a couple of the mobile Promethean board style units in there that we could then move around depending on the need of the room. And then there is a way that they're wired together, so it's, you know, they're both showing the same thing. So I think that's kind of where we were headed with that. Obviously, nothing is, you know, in stone, but that was our general thing.
That seems flexible. I mean, I think that the more flexibility you have, the better. So that feels really good to me to have something that you could move around.
Any plans for like a built-in sound system with microphone? No, maybe like a light speed or something.
I'm gonna let Tony answer that.
As of right now, we haven't had that conversation. Again, that'd be something that when we get to the point to bring Andrews and his team in, I think that's, you know, totally doable. You know, something similar like we have in some of the classrooms that are hardwired in. I don't see why that would be I mean, with the drop ceiling, they're not that tough to install. So I don't think that would be an issue.
I appreciate you bringing that up. That's a good
Are
point.
you
I hadn't
thinking
thought of
the
that.
entire room or just in the flexible area?
I was thinking the flexible area because currently they bring in these giant speakers and microphone, and I expect performance every time, but I
agree.
Clean and, you know, be able to put it around your neck for whoever's presenting, whether it's a guest or whatever. It's less intimidating than the giant person holding the microphone.
I agree. That'd be nice.
So it'd be like a classroom style speaker setup.
Yeah, like
Yes.
the light speed mics.
So that's not that complicated.
Would there be a need to visually separate the quiet area from the active area? Certainly, I wouldn't think that you'd want that separation during the day, but if there are meetings or presentations or staff things happening in there after school, would you want to be able to, draw a curtain or something?
That's a good question.
Or maybe some blinds. I don't know what.
So the wall, the opera walls are going to be, big panels like this that pivot. If you probably during the day, I think what Brandy's getting at is those will probably be somewhat glassy so that you can passively supervise all the kids that are there. But you could layer it with a curtain so that, you pull the whole thing closed and then you pull a curtain closed so that you have some visual privacy.
I would be a little, this is a minor point, I'd be a little concerned that, number one, the money spent, the upkeep on a curtain and the actual need for how many times would you need visual privacy. I think that, to me, that's a cost benefit piece, and I don't think the benefit's that great, and the wear and tear on that item could be significant.
It could also be added at any point in the future if you decide it's something that you need. So
True.
I think this is a good sign that we're talking about this level of detail with your plan, Anjali.
Yeah.
I think we've already accomplished what we set out to do today.
Well, I was hoping that a step backwards would actually get us forwards. That was the idea. Since we're here, I'm wondering, Maria, do you have a thought of if, let's say, the librarian quiet office was sharing the book repair, would you want that to be a separate room with a door, or could you share space there? What would be work for you?
Oh, it would definitely need a door because
Okay.
that way it's the message to people.
Got it.
Please don't
Okay.
come in. I'm on the phone because they're students. They
Yep.
go right up to you.
Okay.
I think that would be helpful. But I wanted to ask about color. I mean, this is like later, but color and the quiet space. I wonder if having a different color carpet or flooring or something.
Yeah. I think we can, we'll present some options, but I think we can use carpet certainly, or use color to kind of indicate different areas. But then also when it opens up, we want it to feel like one space. So we'll do some variations of that. And we do have this in 3D, so we can kind of look at some 3D diagrams of, here's how it looks with two different tones, and here's how it looks with the same. We might want to look at both, because when you open that curtain up, you might want those things to feel continuous. So that should be a discussion, I think.
Okay.
But yes, color and texture and carpet should definitely be part of that conversation.
Okay. And I know Christina is really interested in participating in that part of the conversation. She has a flair for furniture and design and that kind of thing, and interests.
You're bringing houndstooth to this, Christina?
No.
I'm wondering, maybe Walter, if you could address or Tony, I'm not sure who would best address, what are the non-library needs that we'd need to accommodate in terms of offices or testing, either now or post-COVID? Do you have a sense?
I think you're addressing them. Nick, I think also could weigh in. So Nick, Tony, and I all have a perspective on this. The testing and flex office area would be a significant advantage moving forward. The separation of the two areas of the library has an inherent function with that right there that's really nice. If we ever did have to use the library for when we have to use the library for testing, it provides a separate way to do it. I also could see that the way that you're setting up the visibility with this, if we ever had to change function temporarily, that we don't have a lot of casework that's bolted down, helps with that function as well. So I think you've addressed it. My main question back is making sure that the office space for a library staff is appropriate.
Right.
But No, I think you've addressed the forward thinking concerns. I don't know that we plan around COVID specifically, because hopefully we're not
Right.
dealing with remote learning a
Yeah,
lot. in the
yeah.
future.
So does it make sense back in this testing and flex office to have like a testing room and an office, or, or
Good
keep it?
question.
I could almost see where we do, a couple of ideas, it's nice to have multiple spaces, right? It gives us that flexibility to create multiple rooms. I wouldn't be against being able to, some sort of a wall that, or a flexible wall within that space that we could,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so we could break it down into 2 offices. As we talked about, prior to COVID, the library walls were pretty much library. And then when we couldn't share offices, or we had to reduce the amount of shared offices, it was a mad scramble. And that was one of the things I brought up a few weeks ago with our design team was, I want to make sure that we're not designing for the COVID time. So, building off of what Walter added, another nice thing with all of the flexible furniture that we have in the large room, all of that furniture could be, shifted into the flexible workspace. We could set chairs up and have an actual, you could bring a speaker in or something, and use the large area. It's totally flexible outside of the library function. And that's kind of the eyes that I was looking through the space on.
So currently we have 1, 2, 3 different staff members other than Maria that have
Right.
offices in the library. And so that place that you're referring to right there, testing and flex offices, we do have somebody in that space right now.
Correct.
And then and maybe I'm just not seeing it, and that's my fault. That small group section near the librarian
Yep.
area, those are 2 human beings right there too.
Yeah, no, that's exactly why I asked the question. Because I know there are people there, and I want to make sure that, if we need to plan for them, or if that's a temporary thing because of COVID. So I just want to raise the question because operational.
I could see how you would leave the testing and flex offices as a fairly open space, because you may have, and I'm,
Right.
as we have students that may have extra time on a test and need a space to come by and do that with our 504 coordinator, he's going to need to have some supervision of that. You may only have 2 or 3 kids at a time. So I'm kind of thinking how that almost seems to be where you leave the space generally open and may provide either, you could even just privacy dividers would need be.
Yeah.
But that'd be almost more of a furniture issue to me.
Yeah.
Well, and also if you did have some kind of divider or some kind of setup, it makes more sense to have a 504 coordinator in that space rather than separate and running across back and forth for the testing area. And thinking towards the future of the library, I really value the idea of a learning commons and thinking about what staff members should be expected to use during the day in that space. Do we have the right people in the library that students would need to access and be able to, just chat with as needed?
To answer your question specifically, though, I'll struggle to find a home for those people if they no longer have a home there, because we don't have another open space for those people to go in the building currently. It doesn't mean that we can't try and go out there and get creative. It just means that the services that those human beings provide, I don't have another place if they're out of the library. So it means that while this is the commons and so forth, I don't have a new place somewhere else.
And Nick,
I say
is that,
I, but we, and I say, when I say we, I mean that you understand what I'm saying. Yeah.
Nick, is that due to COVID? That you've needed to separate
not.
people and put them.
It's not at all. Yeah, no, it's the increase of staffing and the increase of positions. So yeah, no, this is not COVID related.
Could we turn some of those locker bays into offices at some point? Or I know there's been a lot of talk about different uses for them.
I
There-
think that'd be
no,
go ahead,
it's a
Tony.
it's a great idea, but it's not just take the lockers out and put a wall in, right? You have to provide an air exchange within the space. It wasn't designed as occupied space, so it's not a simple quick fix. And as we've learned over the last couple of years, the importance of the airflow in all of these spaces, you know, it's just not something I can move forward with at that level. It would go much bigger.
My personal bias as far as load is those would be difficult office spaces, and they're great little student cubby spaces potentially.
Right.
The flow in that area is high. There's not a lot of privacy. In fact, that would be great with student cubbies. The second part is they're very shallow. Third, it's not constructed for that. I think that they're student cubbies and or places where like clubs and organizations could plop down their table and do their wares for the day. Those are things that could be really good in those. I would be more apt to create office space somewhere else, including if we needed to break this down further, we could. But to me, that testing and flex office space, I would like to, I mean, my bias is to keep it open.
Yep.
So realistically, there are no small group rooms available for students even with the renovation.
Well, I don't know if that, I mean, are we giving students these 2 small group rooms right here?
I thought we were.
Well, it sounds like we don't have a place to put them. Isn't that right, Nick? You said.
I think as far as looking at from personnel standpoint, the main thing that we're looking at is our 504 coordinator is down there. Nick, that's the number one thing that we have to resolve.
No, yes, and Gracie's in there too, Walter, and that's a location that needs to be considered because the primary use of her is individual meetings with students, and so Gracie will need a home as well. Debbie has always been flexible as far as that testing and flex space, so we created that for her this year, but in that testing and flex space, but truly because we had her originally, and Tony knows this, in a workroom, which had no ventilation.
So if we had to put so we're looking at, you know, Debbie and or 504 coordinator's desk in this testing and flex offices, and then we had to use the small group room number 1 for a second office, that would be a potential way, and then you have 1 small group room for kids to work, correct?
Anjali, couldn't you, in this, I mean, this is a pretty large area for this testing and offices.
We can get 3 separate rooms in there, absolutely.
So you could create 2 small offices that you could relocate these folks from, and then you could still maintain a testing area. And if at some point, you know, they were able to vacate those offices, it'd just be more small group rooms for kids. But if you can't, you can't. But that would get these, you know, the 2 rooms that are right off the library and supervisable back into the hands of kids for small group work.
Okay, and that's, yeah, that you may convince me that,
you know, those are non-structural, those will be non-structural walls. So, you know, nobody likes to demo what you've already built, but they could be removed. I mean, those walls could be removed later. We could detail them in such a way that, you know, lightweight steel framing or something where it's, you know, it's not that big a deal to knock them out.
yeah, and just ask that there's visibility in and out of those offices so that they can be used for, yeah. If there's room, that's fine. You convince me otherwise.
Love it.
So just to recap, we've got a testing room and 2 offices, but we have 3 individuals. So
Correct.
we're housing 2 of them over here, and then we still have 1 left over. Is that correct?
Correct.
And there's no other building solutions, no other spots.
Yeah, Maria, right now I tried to put somebody in breezeway in a science area, and it's just to do that type of work or that their time with kids, it just is not, it doesn't protect the student or the employee. And so really that's the last space. Otherwise, we have every space used on campus, every single one.
Got it.
For the first time since I've been here in 5 years. So
Sounds like time for a portable.
No, don't say portable.
Okay, I'm going to
Maybe.
throw out one more possibility. If we made this quiet room smaller, I might be able to get a fourth office in. Is it worth it?
No.
Because, you know, right now we could also, okay, I might be able to reconfigure that a little bit and make one of these offices smaller too.
Right
Okay.
now, a lot of the functions we would use this area, this
Mhm.
flexible work tables behind the glass wall. It's already a little on the small side for
Yeah.
a lot of the larger functions. So no, the first one, that'd be fine to move the offices, that testing. I think that the other would compromise the integrity of the use.
Okay.
Anjali, if you created 3 spaces where I've got the red square,
Yeah.
you could move all 3 of those individuals into this area. This space could be used for testing. You know,
Right, because that's not all the time.
right. So, I mean,
That's a
you
good
have
idea.
these 2
Yeah.
areas right off the
That's a
library
good
that
idea.
have, maximum flexibility. You could
Yeah.
sign up for 1 or 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that keeps it separate. I mean, the testing is more of a semi-public. I mean, that's sort of a student focused, for everybody. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Because then it's small group room or testing, depending on whether testing's going on.
Agreed.
And I think the challenge here for kid use is just that it's very hard to supervise. So there are some advantages to like giving that up to be something else and keeping that small group work happening here, and maybe like we talked about a Zoom room here, and then these 2 that are glass and again right in and part of the active area of the library.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Great idea.
And at some point, if you don't need the offices, you can recapture that space, for library functions. But I don't think the trend is heading towards fewer adults in schools. So maybe not.
The budget trend,
A budget trend, not a need trend.
not a desirable trend.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, this is great feedback. Based on the schedule, I'm going to get drawing on this right away.
Thank you.
But this is really good, and I think we did address all the kind of big questions. So I wanted to poke at that office thing a little bit because I knew it was going to be a thing that we had to figure out.
Yeah.
And I can absolutely work with Tony, and him and I have walked this building so many times together to try and find another fit, because honestly, if those were not factors, I mean, I love what's been built and drawn up here. And so I'm happy to continue to do this and then communicate out to the group if we were to find another home for some of these folks. And so, but in the meantime, I don't have that home, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, or the Zoom, additional places for Zoom booths for students. I mean, that seems like it would be really nice for them, actually, if there were more than one distributed around the school. Brandy, do you want to?
I think next steps for us is to really dive into the furniture options now that we have a set plan, and for Anjali and her team to get going on putting some construction drawings together, so that assuming that this levy passes in early February, that we can make all this happen on the schedule we looked at. So.
Yep.
We may do a preview with a smaller group from this larger group, and then we'll come back in as I showed on that schedule and give everybody an update of where things are. Great.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Good work, Anjali. Thank you.
Thank you all.
That's great. And then we'll take Anjali's notes and information and send them all to Maria to
Yeah.
post on her site, so it's available to others.
Yeah, Maria, if you'll share that with me, I've got a PAC meeting with parents coming up this coming week, and like to give them an update on this. Okay.
Okay, yeah, and I put together a timeline with artifacts from it, all the steps that I'll just keep tracking this on.
Sweet.
Great.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. All right.
Okay. Thanks,
Okay.
everybody. Thanks,
Thanks.
Maria.
Ready?
Take care.
Sure.